welcome to this edition of the Mashreq Sustainability Dialogues, a podcast series that facilitates knowledge exchange with critical voices tasked with leading the region's drive towards net zero and for a more sustainable future for all, with focuses on sustainable finance, green tech, businesses. We really try to understand how different stakeholders are moving towards a more sustainable economy for everyone. So today, I'm really excited to dive into the topic of advancing sustainability with small to medium enterprises, commonly known as SMEs, by empowering entrepreneurs. And I'm really excited to have an all-star panel. So today, we are welcomed and joined by Dr. Haythem Riahi, co-founder and CEO at Circa Biotech. This is Adrienne Doolan, Chief Executive Officer at Green Touches, Marcos Bish, Managing Director at Summertown Interiors, Dr. Alberto Peralta, Director of Innovation Center at Abu Dhabi University, and thank you and welcome to our host, Mr. Rajeev Chalisgaonkar, Head of Business, Banking and NEOBiz at Mashreq. So to kick off this conversation, I'm going to welcome our host and ask him to give us some brief opening comments on the topic at hand and kick us off with this fascinating topic. So thank you, Rajeev.
Thank you, Leila. Thank you very much. And a warm welcome to our guests and expert speakers. We deal with SMEs day in and day out as a bank. And in the process of banking with them, you, of course, end up having dialogues with them on something more than banking. And sustainability has clearly become something far more important to them than it was, say, 10 years back. And we are seeing 2-3 different trends. One, regulations are driving them towards becoming more sustainable. That's the easiest one to understand. Then there are those who are part of supply chains of larger corporates, where the larger corporates are driving them towards sustainability as they try to meet their own goals. But what surprises us the most is how SMEs are driving themselves towards sustainability. Because when we have asked SMEs that what is it that motivates you most, the answer often is, I want to leave a legacy. I want to generate employment and I want to leave a legacy. And leaving a clean legacy is important to them. It's something which feels a bit counterintuitive. The general consensus is that the whole agenda is driven by large corporates, but that doesn't seem to be the case. It's actually driven by grassroots entrepreneurs as well. I'm quite looking forward to the discussion today because it's not an easy agenda for everybody to deliver on. There are regulatory issues, there are funding issues, and there are a host of practical issues. So I'm quite looking forward to the next half an hour to hear from practitioners as to how they see this agenda. So thank you very much once again, and back to you, Leila.
Thank you, Rajeev, for those opening comments. And I feel like that was a great kind of overview of the situation. There are challenges, but the motivation is here in the region. Grassroots movements are making such impressive commitments towards sustainability and net zero. So to start off, I'm going to go to Adrienne and kind of get your opening comments as well, and really kind of ask you to give us maybe a bit of an idea on the regional landscape and how does it look like right now for entrepreneurs working on sustainability issues and tackling climate change in the region.
Yeah, thanks, Leila. Good afternoon, everybody. Rajeev, you made a really good point when you talk about leaving a legacy behind. I think that most people working within sustainability, that is the most important, and we don't mean a financial legacy, but we'd like to see, climate change, climate action, legacy left behind. I'm always telling my sons that I want them to put their children on their knee and say that their grandmother helped to make things better in the world. So hopefully that will be the case. Within the UAE, generally now at the moment, the UAE are seen as leaders within the region on sustainability. And of course, I think Saudi would come in definitely a second now. All eyes are on the region for COP28. I think it's on, everybody will tag it on to every webinar, every online meeting that's going on now is COP28. But it is really urgent to have these discussions and continue with them now. because the scientific IPCC report, the last report of the since the August 2021 was published yesterday, and I think we can see that we're not keeping within our 1.5 agreement from the Paris Agreement, and so it will be really important for the COP here, because we're going to have a look at what happened and what has happened since the Paris Agreement, and how many countries are actually reaching their targets, and that's unfortunately very few. So for the SMEs, there's an awful lot of SMEs working. I mean, they're the backbone of every economy, right? And certainly now, I mean, I'm part of a group with Dr. Haythem. Actually, we're over 250 or more SMEs, all working within sustainability and extremely impactful companies. And one of the reasons nobody really knows about us, and lots of the reasons are lack of funding. We can't do our impactful ESG reporting because of funding, and we don't really get a look in. Recently, there was the climate pledge was signed by 21 companies, and there was not one SME in sustainability involved in that. So I think, and it's very, very difficult to get our voices heard. And it's something that I'm working really hard on to push the SMEs forward, and especially those working in impactful companies.
Definitely, and thank you for that. I mean, SMEs versus kind of major corporation, there's obviously such a difference in terms of the impact, in terms of the challenges, in terms of the access to funding, like you mentioned, Adrienne. And obviously, we're also going to dive into the topic of COP28 maybe later. But before that, I really wanted to get your opening thoughts as well, and this focus on SMEs versus larger corporation. I'll go to you, Marcos, on that. How can maybe SMEs have a advantage or disadvantage regarding tackling climate change issues in terms of their structure, in terms of regulatory frameworks, et cetera, et cetera? Is it a challenge? Is it an opportunity to be a smaller company? Obviously, they have more flexibility, but at the same time, maybe less exposure. So I wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think we're an SME and we are in the construction industry, so we have quite an impact. And when we know that buildings contribute about 40% of the greenhouse gases. So as an SME, I think we both see the challenges as well as the opportunities. The challenges are obviously we don't have large budgets. We cannot hire big sustainability teams to drive sustainability through the company. So it is something that we have to do with our own internal resources. In our case, we set up a sustainability committee from people of different parts of the organization. We're only 150 employees. So from that point of view, it's easier to drive it, because if your management, if your corporate team acts as a champion and a leader, then obviously you can get the other people on board. Whereas what we see in large organizations often is that often seems like a bolt-on to the organization, and they seem to be fighting the rest of the organization. Where with us, it's really people from different parts of the organization, and the management team is very much involved. So we're trying to drive it, and also whatever improvement actions we take, we can embed into our processes and the forms and the way we operate our business. And it's obviously easier for us to do because we can easily change process, we can easily change the way we work and embed it into the systems. So that's definitely an advantage. We never went to sustainability route because of being pushed by other organizations, whereas actually most of our clients are the Fortune 500, the large international organizations. Yeah. We offer it to them, and often we even being told from, well, I don't really need it, but we say, well, you're going to get it anyway, whether you like it or not. But yes, there are definitely also lots of opportunities, because in our business, particularly, people look at the price, the delivery time, and the quality, and also having the sustainability credentials and the story and the narrative behind it. You also have you bring something else to the table, which can open doors, and if you find like-minded organizations, or if you find like-minded people in the large organizations, you make a good connection. So if once your core values match, it makes obviously doing business easier. So this is where we see the opportunities. And like you mentioned, as an SME, we also believe that the SME is the backbone of the business in general. I think we account for about 60% of the business. So we always look for like-minded organizations, which can also be a challenge, because lots of SMEs see the whole sustainability journey as cumbersome, difficult, time-consuming, and expensive, which is not true. So once we deal with other organizations and we can show them how we actually flourish on the back of that, I think we can have an impact on other SMEs or similar companies, and raise the awareness. I think that is a little bit where we sit.
I think you mentioned really critical points in terms of mindset. Sustainability is not just, it's a whole mindset of a company. It's from the top to the bottom. It's grassroots movements, like Adrienne mentioned earlier as well. And this key idea of collaboration. So knowledge sharing between different SMEs, and even knowledge sharing between SMEs and sometimes larger corporations. This idea of learning from one another, I think, is critical. And I wanted to bring you on, Dr. Haythem, with your opening comments, of course, but in this aspect of collaboration, and also particularly the role of maybe what startup accelerators can do. I know you've worked closely at Circa Biotech with a key startup accelerator, the Catalyst in the UAE. So I wanted to get your opening comments on that and on the general topic, but also the role startup accelerators and how collaboration can really help us drive sustainability forward.
Thank you very much. Actually, I wanted to start by what Mr. Rajeev said and what Adrienne highlighted, the notion of legacy and how we sustainable company want to let a legacy, and a legacy of sustainability, but also this goes together as a legacy to be sustainable. We have also to be economically sustainable. We have to sustain ourselves above the subsidiaries of the states or of organization or of big companies. And for that, this is what you highlighted. It's really crucial that we work together. Allow me a few seconds to talk about what we are doing. So at Circa Biotech, we are fighting a big problem, global problem, which is food waste, and how food waste ends up in landfills and generate methane, which is 80 times more potent as greenhouse effect gas than the CO2. There is no technology nowadays, or even new technology, that will solve this problem by itself. It's the union of forces, it's the union of technology and of companies that will solve this problem. So how we deal with, as an example, the food waste management. First, if the food is still consumed by human, we can give it to food banks and give it to people to feed people, which is a big part of the food waste, actually related to the expiry date, another issue. Then if we cannot give it to human, we transform it into animal feed. And this is what we do at Circa Biotech. And if it's not possible to do it this way, we can compost it and turn it into the soil and sequestrate CO2 and offset this. So this is something that a union of force could only solve this kind of big problems, global problems. 1/3 of the food produced globally is dumped into landfills, which is completely wasteful.
In the Middle East, sorry, I cut you there, but in the Middle East,
you are right. So the UAE, we are the 4th country worldwide per capita when it comes to food waste, which is like insane, knowing that we are importing 85% of our food. So it's so paradoxical.
Mm-hmm.
One actor is, as you said, accelerators and incubators that give the push for the companies, for the startups, for the SMEs to really start and put them into the market. This is important. But this is just, how to say, giving the spark. This is just initiating the journey of an SME. After, it's the whole economical ecosystem that have to support. Adrienne was talking, for example, about the ESG reporting. This is something very important for us companies that we are acting into the sustainability and our potential to offset carbon is really important. Our contribution to reach this 1.5 degree is really important, but it's unseen because it's undocumented, because we don't have the resources, as Marco says, as companies with less than 20 employees, to have resources to work on ESG reporting, on carbon offsetting, all of these actions that might also be useful for big companies when they are trying to offset their emissions.
Yeah, and I think ESG reporting is major. We touched upon as well the role of technology, but in all of that, I feel like there's also the importance of education, which is where I wanted to bring Dr. Peralta in for your opening comments, but really the role of education, mentorship, training, and how we can also bridge those gaps between industries and academia, knowing where are the skill sets that we need to develop in terms of sustainability, in terms of initiating sustainable initiatives, whether it's working with the accelerators or working simultaneously, but this idea of the role of education. Your opening thoughts, Dr. Peralta.
You left the easy question for me, I guess.
You're the expert,
yeah.
We want to hear from you.
I know. I mean, I'm probably can speak on my dual role as or triple role even, as researcher, professor, and director of innovation. So in that, what you ask is probably too much of a burden for education. Like Haythem was expressing, it is kind of a common thing that we need to put us together or to it, because through that education, particularly in sustainability summits like COP, like the COPs, education and particularly higher education institutions are not there. So we are being systematically pushed out of the general equation. Why? We may be too theoretical, but this probably mindset shift that is needed. I think it was Marco speaking of that mindset shift, and Adrienne also touched on that issue. I have heard maybe my colleagues speaking of probably a more top-down approach, similar to what we have lived and the type of business as usual approach that we, particularly in the market, use for about anything. And that leads, and we are experienced on that, to greenwashing and now to sustainability washing. Yeah. It will be probably, rather than top-down alone, but a complementation with bottom-up approach that needs to be thought of, and that can be, I mean, we need to find out ways of implementing that bottom-up approach because we are not used to. And that goes to where academia can help. And it is in the development of tools that can help implement that bottom-up approach. Sustainability is not only about the economics, and I mean, there's obviously the definition that we use in academia, that sustainability is kind of the balance of economics, social and environmental outcomes, inputs, and blah, blah. What we don't say usually in academia is how that balance should be achieved. We don't know if it is more economics than social or environmental, and if that is something that is equal for everyone, and if that cannot evolve over time. We always think in academia that everybody out there is looking at this, and I'm sorry to use this word, as in a cross-sectional type of approach, meaning this is a one-time shot, and it is not. Yeah. It is more of a movie, what we're living in. And that means that there is an evolutionary cycle or transition or transitions that need to be taken into account. And if we're speaking top-down, bottom-up approaches, and we don't have tools to measure what we are doing, what we are going through in those transitions, then we have a problem. An Excel sheet is not going to be making it. It's not going to help.
Yeah.
So in that sense, decision making here is vital. And usually we're approaching sustainability with the same decision tools that we had before. And that's why everybody is speaking of decarbonization as kind of something that can be measured easily because it is quantitatively measured. But we're leaving outside the qualitative approaches that are needed when we're speaking of social impact and when we're speaking of environmental impact, particularly with non-humans. So in this case, maybe academia and academic voices can be brought in, and education should go towards that end.
And following up on that, I wanted to stay with you, Dr. Peralta, in terms of, I feel like it's this idea of communication that you've been mentioning and how to communicate the different aspects and the different moving parts of sustainability within an organization. And we've been mentioning ESG reporting, which is, I think, such a critical aspect as well of sustainability and understanding if we're moving forward and what needs to be done. In terms of that, do you think the region the awareness is there enough in terms of ESG reporting, or do we know how to, where to measure, how to measure, and how we can move forward from there? Just wanted to get your thoughts on that, Dr. Peralta.
Yeah. I think that in general, and I'm speaking, I kind of relate to many of the government agencies and key players in the region, particularly in the UAE, that are trying to push the sustainability agenda in the country. And I think that they are all aware that ESG is key. What I don't see is that key role in particularly achieving goals that can be derived from the planetary boundaries, for example. Why? Because we're speaking of something that is larger than a set of measures or that set of KPIs that are stated in an ESG report. Why? Because many of the things that are happening towards the sustainability agenda, probably if grasped in something that is as simple as an ESG report, can help at one moment. But what happens next is what we are probably needing. We are currently at a stage where we don't need to measure only what is happening now, but what it is that we're going to be suffering in the near future and maybe in the larger term. And that's what we lack right now. And ESG reporting is not addressing that concern. The transitions, again, are not there. And decisions are made on the basis of what we are living now. And we all know that what we have now is not going to be able to solve. And I think Adrienne commented on this. We're not yet where we were supposed to be. Could it be that can we, in a way, can we reverse engineer where we were supposed to be to know what it is that the actions that we need to take today? Yeah, that would be amazing, but we don't have the tools, and we are not working towards that end.
Those are the major challenges. You mentioned a point on regulation as well and the role of government. And Adrienne, I wanted to bring you back into this conversation through your experiences and kind of knowing the different stakeholders at hand in the region. Do you believe that the regulation in terms of supporting SMEs in their drive towards sustainability is here yet, or do we need to move forward, maybe different case studies around the globe and in the region itself? I mean, the region itself has countries at different stages of their sustainability journey. You mentioned the UAE and Saudi Arabia as leading the region and in a lot of sense the world in terms of that. But is the regulation there, the policy frameworks? Do you believe that they're here yet, or still need to?
should I be negative or should I be correct or politically correct? Or no, I mean, I don't believe they're here. I mean, we're still talking about a relatively young nation, right? So we can make excuses, but I'm not really in favor of looking outside, you know, because we want to concentrate on what we are working on here. Because what I'm trying to do is within the UAE and the region. It's not within Europe and it's not within the US. So I think we can, all of us working in sustainability here, can keep our focus also here. And therefore, I think that we do need more government support for sure. Because I don't think the government is actually aware of half of what we're doing. I got a chance when I was at COP27 to speak to the minister, and I said to her, you know, you've got a whole bunch of people in front of you, with egos and consultants, and but consulting, egos, and eco just don't go together, and you're missing out. So we definitely need somebody to bring the SMEs to the front. And if that needs to be a government regulation to do that and support, then so be it, because we're working really hard on all solutions, not just for carbon sequestration, but we're working on so many different solutions that are all super impactful. And yeah, we don't get an opportunity. And education is actually key. Education, creating awareness, and everybody working together. I mean, we want to work with academia because, that's the youth. They need to know what's going on. We need to involve them. I mean, we were last week for a sustainability fair at the Wollongong University in Dubai. And it was, to get the students to come in and communicate. And we maybe had like 20, 25 students out of a whole university. That's not enough. It's not enough. So it's about unlocking that key to creating awareness is really key. And I do feel that the government actually, I hate putting the onus on government for everything, because, I feel we should all take individual responsibility. But where we can't, then I feel the government really need to step in, and I do believe they can help in this situation. But it's partnerships, it's collaboration. It's no longer thinking, how much profit can I make? No, it's how much contribution can I actually make in order to save humanity? Because I think that's what we're actually looking at the moment.
Yeah, and I think there are so many, like you mentioned, there are so many challenges, and the responsibilities are throughout. Stakeholders, industry, academia, everyone as a collective needs to kind of push forward, but definitely government regulations can support, and the government in terms of the UAE have made amazing initiatives so far, and as well it's going to be really exciting to see COP28, like you mentioned at the beginning, Adrienne. Everyone has been talking about COP28 and leading up to it. So yeah, Alberto, I see your hand is up. If you want to jump in here, go ahead.
Yeah. Connected with regulations, we're trying to work with the government in something that we call a government lab, so that we can put, like you said, multiple stakeholders together to understand how policy can be developed towards the idea of sustainability, and multiple stakeholders put together. There's one thing that when speaking of regulations, we tend to forget, and that's my hat as an entrepreneur. And as a director of an incubator, we tend to avoid regulations when we are starting out. Why? Because regulations usually are limiting factors. So how we can, it is not only the regulation, but how can the regulation can be spread around so that there is a consensus, enough consensus, so that the regulation is accepted and everybody follows that that path. Yeah. That was my comment.
And I wanted it as well. There's so many topics we want to tackle, and we're starting to run out of time, but I wanted to get this idea of securing funding, because I think that's a major obstacle that a lot of SMEs are faced with on a daily basis. So I wanted to go to you, Dr. Haythem, and then also you, Marcos, to bring you back into the conversation. Maybe we'll start with Dr. Haythem. How can SMEs really secure extra funding, whether it's from larger corporation, whether it's from government subsidies or joint ventures? What are some kind of key takeaways from your experience that you can share with our listeners? No problem.
I would say all of the above, actually, obviously. But what would be really important for any SME or startup that is fundraising is being in partnership with a VC or a fund that is having an impact is really important. We need those investors, or we need those corporations when they invest in our technology or when they acquire our technology to have this same vision and to continue this work and to continue this impact on what we are trying to achieve here, because after all, this is what we are trying to do for all. Like we don't have a planet B. We all have to do this on our way, and we have to do it in a way that is economically, socially, and environmentally sustainable. I mean, durable, as durable. This is obvious. Now, talking about our environment here and economical environment in the GCC countries in general, it's investing in sustainability, investing in impactful endeavors, it's very new. It's very recent, is very new. So I think also that there is a role for financial institutions to start this, to kickstart this funding, showing that it is something that could be also with a high ROI for investors, and it is sustainable and is preparing the future. I think also there is a responsibility of financial institution to jumpstart this movement.
Yeah, definitely. And Marcos, I also wanted to get your thoughts on that in terms of financing, investing, maybe as well this aspect of investing in green technologies. There are so many technologies out there, but sometimes the investment isn't even here to scale up those technologies and to bring them to the next level. So your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't know too much about that, but what I can say in terms of as an SME, in terms of funding, we're not looking for funding as an SME. We're very passionate about what we do. We really try to make a change, but where I think where you can help SMEs, in my opinion, it could be regulation, but also it could be incentivizing them. And when I say that we're in the construction industry, 50% of our clients' turnover is the government. The other 50% is the large international organizations. Now, when we tender for projects and we bring out our sustainability reports, we have our long-term goals in terms of waste management and all these things. We build environmentally friendly certified interiors for free, for which we do not charge additional money. So this is where the government can come in and say, okay, if this is what you're offering, there could be maybe some preferential treatment or incentive to win these type of projects rather than always go the traditional route. Similar as that would look at amortization, where you can also be incentivized as an organization. So I think incentives could help quite a bit.
Definitely. Definitely. And as we start to wrap up, I see Adrienne and Alberto, you have your hands up. So we'll go to Adrienne first, and in your comment as well, include your closing comments in terms of advancing the sustainability pathways through SMEs and by empowering entrepreneurs, and maybe touch upon this idea of COP28. I love to finish some of these podcasts with asking kind of what would be, if you had to say top three requirements or top three, what would you like to see on the agenda of COP28? But please, Adrienne, and then we'll go to Alberto and then we'll head up to Rajeev. But yeah.
I just wanted to actually hit on the financing part, because I think the financial institutions, I can understand in some ways why they're very hesitant to play a role given some of the history that has been going on. But now I think, it seems a lot of people are here to stay in the country. It's not such a transient country anymore. And a lot of us are here to work and build the economy in a sustainable manner. I'd love to see the banking industry where they would meet actually with people, with their clients, build up relationships and build up the trust, so that the bank feel that they're lending and they're not feeling that, I'm going to give these 10 million and in a week's time they're going to be gone and we're stuck with this, so
where we can see those improvements are here. And
yeah, exactly. So I'd love to see that. And I want to give everybody an opportunity, and I know we're on loads of time, and I could talk till the cows come home. For COP28, I would love to see the SMEs working in sustainability being given a seat at the table. I think that's super important. I'm working on that, so hopefully on the next podcast we'll be there. But that's what I'd like to see. I'd like to see everybody working together, private sector, government, academia, to create a deep awareness and involve everybody. But for my desire for COP28 is SMEs with a big seat at the table.
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Thank you, Adrienne. Please, Alberto, on your end.
Yeah, touching back on the financing, and in general, rather than financing, the funding. I mean, the countries, except one, around here are all pretty much risk averse. That means that sustainability poses a lot of risks in the equation. So I would suggest maybe touching on what Marcos said. Incentives should be there, and particularly from the government and large corporations, there must be a clear effort to put in place the sustainable procurement. So that particularly for SMEs and startups, they find a great incentive in participating in tenders if they are sustainable, so that even from the base, the aversion to risk and to invest in this type of startups is somehow reversed through the incentives. Now, we are forgetting that microfinancing may play a role here. And we haven't seen very few efforts in microfinancing. Obviously, this is not for the typical bank or banking function, but there may be a lot of efforts, particularly in rural areas, that could be incentivized towards sustainability. Sustainability brings many more small players to the ecosystem by definition, and that means that not everybody is looking for a finance return, but for something that is more balanced, and that means their needs for financing and for funds are smaller, and that would be something that I would like to see in COP28. I have spoken of collaboration and bottom-up approaches. I have spoken of how we can measure the transitions, not just the spots within those transitions, because we are missing a large part of the story if we are only concentrating on ESG reports. And this last part of sustainable financing or funding, and I would rather stick with the sustainable funding rather than financing, we have COP28 as an opportunity to deal with those issues.
Dr. Haythem, Marcos, quick closing comments in terms of COP28. Let's go to Dr. Haythem first, and then Marcos, and then Rajeev for our closing comments.
That's very difficult after what Alberto said. I think he summed it up. He summed it up for us. Yes. Yeah, partnership and collaboration is key with all what we are doing. Yes. Giving a front seat row to SMEs and hearing them, this bottom-up approach is definitely what we should do, at least what we should be reinforcing and taking this benefit. I think, Marcos, with your parallel that you did with the Emiratization for incentivizing the sustainable approach and the size also, because sometimes we are, disadvantaged by our size in big tenders. We just got a tender with ADNOC, and that without this point that incentivize us for the size of our company, we will never get to those tenders. So this is, in my sense, really what we should working on in the future. And of course, financial institution and funding is nerve of the war. So we need that definitely.
Yeah. Marcos, go ahead.
Yeah, not much to add. The only thing I can say is in terms of COP28, I think it is great we're hosting it in the UAE, because for what we expect to happen is we'll probably see more regulation before and after COP28 coming in, which is great. But I think the biggest advantage we will have out of it is that it really raises the awareness, because we read about it, we hear about it. So I think it is just great for awareness. And I think it will help all companies that are on the sustainability journey.
Yeah. So unfortunately, I feel like we could talk about this forever, and it's such an interesting topic. So it's the end of our time together for the Mashreq Sustainability Dialogues, and I would like to bring back our host and thank him, Mr. Rajeev. If you would like to wrap us up as we end this episode of the Mashreq Sustainability Dialogues, Rajeev, please go ahead.
Thank you, Leila. It's been such a thought-provoking discussion, and I want to thank each one of you for it. There's a lot to take away from it. Adrienne spoke about regulations versus education, that the push and the pull both are important if you want to bring SMEs into the ESG journey. That point really rang true. Marcos had a really good point about in SMEs, actually, it may be easier because the decision-making chains are much shorter. If the entrepreneur is convinced about the need to do this, it happens. There are no departments to fight with each other over budgets and who will do what. It's effectively an entrepreneur-driven story. That was a really great point. Haythem made a really sharp point about ESG for SMEs needs to be economically viable. These people work on thin margins. They have mouths to feed, employees to take care of. They will not do this unless it is economically viable. And we all have to together find ways to make it economically viable. Alberto spoke about funding, and that's close to my heart personally as an SME banker. I draw a parallel example. Today, if you wanted to start a program to fund women entrepreneurs, there is enough data available from World Bank and IFC and others, which shows that women-owned businesses are actually better credit risks. The default rates are lower. You can actually model a whole credit program looking at the probability of default and actually give preferential pricing to women, and it's been done. My wish is that similar data starts becoming available about ESG-minded SMEs. My own hypothesis is that an ESG-minded enterprise will have a far more longevity. They will simply last longer, they will be more successful, and thus there will be better credit risks. There is just not enough data yet for financiers like us to start basing our lending decisions. So right now, there is just no proper way to assess that risk and say, hey, this is a better risk, and thus I will price it better. I'm hoping that over the coming years, that becomes easier, and then we can lend more actively in this space. But thank you once again. This has been such a wonderful discussion, and I thank you all on behalf of Mashreq.
So thank you, Rajeev, for those closing comments. And I'd like to really thank our featured speakers. So Dr. Haythem Riahi, Circa, Biotech, Adrienne Doolan from Green Touches, Mr. Marcos Bish from Summertown Interiors, and Dr. Alberto Peralta at Abu Dhabi University. So there is so much to be looking forward to in 2023 and towards COP28. And as a youth myself, I'm really excited for these conversations to keep going. But thank you very much, everyone. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in.